So what are some of the masculine qualities of God versus the feminine qualities of God?
Well, what if we first discuss what are the qualities of God,
Sure.
and then we can start allocating them as to masculinity and femininity or otherwise?
Yeah.
Because masculinity and femininity is in itself quite an interesting discussion in terms of what defines masculinity and what defines femininity and so forth. And I feel that that is a very, very separate discussion to what are God's attributes and qualities, and then maybe we need to proceed as to which one of those qualities are feminine or masculine or whatever. Does that make sense? So I was thinking perhaps if we rub this off the board now and just perhaps start looking at the primary qualities. Now, it's interesting with all of God's qualities that pretty much all of them have what I would call sub-attributes or qualities to them. It's a bit like you have a thing inside of you called an eye, right? That thing, which can be described in its own form, it has a certain type of shape and a certain type of size. So you could say your eye. What could we say about a person's eye? So the eye.
It's round.
It's round, completely round, isn't it? Like it's got a round shape. So we know everyone's eye is the same pretty much. It's round, unless it's been deformed in some way or they've lost it, right? It has a retina part to the eye, so it has a retina. These are what you would call, how do you spell retina?
I-N-A.
These are what you would call, so this is the object, so we call that the object, and these are its attributes. And even parts of the eye have attributes of their own. Can you see that? The retina itself has attributes of its own. It has rods and cones, some of which determine gradients of light, others of which determine colour, right? But the retina itself doesn't do that. It converts it all into electrical signals. So that's another attribute and quality. So you can see that with each attribute, so we can pick an object in the body, for example, the eye. We can then describe its attributes, but inside of each one of those attributes we could then go and describe another series of attributes of that particular thing, and then it makes sense, of course, that at some point we'll be able to go, okay, let's look at the rods and the cones in the retina of the eye. So we know that there's rods and cones, and I think it's the cones that look at the colour and the rods that look at the gradients of light, and then we could describe them as having sub-attributes and so forth. And you can see, if you really take this down to the infinite in terms of miniaturisation, there is the potential that each particular thing we could describe has another whole series of attributes and qualities to that particular thing. Does that make sense? Okay, well, let's now apply that theory to God's nature.
Yes, please.
All right? So let's examine God's nature. So let's start with the primary thing we know about God's nature, which is this love. When we start describing love, what terms do we use? What qualities do we describe in love? So you might have a part of love is called kindness. But that's not the only part of love. So you could say love is the object, in this case, that we're describing in terms of our analogy here. This is now an analogy. And this is the attribute that describes part of that object. So let's look at kindness. Now, kindness itself could be described separately. What other qualities? You have compassion. And then that has its own qualities and nature. You have mercy, which has its own qualities and nature, and we could keep listing parts of love. All these are a part of love, if you think of it. They're all part of love's attributes and qualities, and they themselves has attributes and qualities of their own, every single one of those. And if we start analysing what that could describe, we may even go deeper and deeper into each thing, right down even to the actual colours. One thing that mankind hasn't discovered on Earth very much at this point is that each one of these qualities has a colour associated with it, and it has a sound associated with it, and it has a smell associated with it, and it has all these other attributes all associated with these particular emotions. So when you enter the spirit world, you become a bit more sensitive to all of those things. So you actually see the colour. When somebody has a feeling of kindness, you see a colour coming out of the person of a specific type that's a part of love that you see interblended with love, but you see it as a different type of quality, and it has a smell, an odour, like it's a very aromatic odour in the case of kindness, and you can smell the odour of kindness. So you can actually smell it on the person and also coming out of the person, and you can hear it as well. It has a sound, it has a melody to it, a musical song, if you like, and so forth. It has all of these attributes and qualities that we've even on earth yet to discover about these things. But this is why love feels so good, because when somebody is kind to you, for a lot of people, when they first experience kindness, they're overwhelmed with grief, because they don't realise at that point in time that their soul is not just actually feeling the emotion of kindness, but there's a song of kindness, the melody of it, there's the smell of it, and the taste of it, and the colour of it, and everything is being absorbed by the soul at that point.
Is this natural love and divine love? Natural
love and divine love, yeah, is similar, but obviously if we're talking about divine love, we're talking about a different colour, different colours than natural love. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So every single attribute and quality of God, it would also make sense, has its own odour, its own colour, and it's all substances that can be felt from God, and are in fact felt from God. So if we examine the quality of love, if we're talking now about divine love, it has so this is a love that can only come from God's soul. It can't come from a human soul. Even if you, as a human soul, have it within you, it still cannot come from you. You can't refer God's love onto somebody else, as a lot of people who are interested in New Age stuff think that they're able to do. It's only the natural love that can do that. You can only give your love to somebody else. And in fact, I can't even give your love to somebody else here. Like, I can't give your love to Anto. You can only give your love to Anto. Does that make sense? And it's the same principle with God. Only God can give her love to you. Nobody else can do it for her. There's no mediator in the process. There's no person who's a middleman in the process, which is great when you think about it, because you know you're having a personal relationship under those circumstances. So with the divine love, this is the love that comes specifically from God and has the ability, given certain conditions, to enter the human form. And when I say the human form, the soul being the human form, the human soul. And that love has characteristics and attributes of its own, which are very, very different to the characteristics and attributes of what I would call love that is natural love. So natural love has certain characteristics and attributes, right, that are different, although sometimes similar in nature, but they're different. They have different colours, different smells, different tastes, different sounds than what comes from God. Right? And of course, we have the ability as a human race to investigate these matters and see them actually occur as well. Yeah.